What's going on, YouTube? Here we are, 48 hours later after the Cowboys versus Eagles week one. I'm your host, Slater, and I've got my co host, Mike, with me. The first thing we're going to kind of roll into is initial reaction versus the 48-hour reaction, right? So we've had a couple of days to kind of sit on this game and stuff like that. So I just kind of want to ask you, what was your initial reaction to like right after you saw CeeDee Lamb drop it and knew that that was probably it versus, 48 hours later? How are you feeling, Mike?
Well, there's no moral victories in this. Obviously, being Cowboys fans, we know our team. We know who's going to be out there and what they're capable of lining up. Especially Week One versus the Eagles. We watched them all off season, all their transactions, all the different additions and players and whatnot. So we kind of knew what to expect. My initial reaction is I don't think the NFL and the fans around the league knew what to expect from the Cowboys, and now they kind of do.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of opinions of how the Cowboys season is going to go were changed on Thursday night. Yes, we lost, but one of the things you and I both appreciate is when a team loses, going down swinging, right?
Yeah.
We didn't just get beat. We had every opportunity to win the game ourselves, and we just missed some opportunities. But as we'll cover in this video, we both saw some things on offense and defense that we definitely liked. But my initial reaction is I'm very excited for the Cowboys this year and what we think the team can do. And it was, in my opinion, it was a very, very good game from them.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, my 48-hour reactions, I feel way better than I did, initially, which, I mean, it's not much of a difference, like, between now and initially. Um, Initially, I just was kind of upset because, I don't like Philly fans. I don't like Philly. I don't like Philly fans. I'm that guy that wants to go to the game in Philly, wear a Cowboys jersey, and probably get
Right.
beat up. But I'm excited for what this team can hold. I think the coaching staff and everything that Schottenheimer have been preaching and promising, we'll talk about it, but he kind of kept his word, right?
Sure.
And then even on the defensive side of the ball, we had a lot of question marks. It's pretty much a new defense outside the secondary, and even on the secondary, you have a new starting corner that you traded for. And I think they kind of calmed some concerns that a lot of Cowboys fans may have. And
Right.
offensively, I loved what they produced that first half. Now the question has to be answered of why in the first half was our defense stale and the offense was on fire, and then after the wire delay, it just seemed like everything flipped.
Right.
And it's different circumstances. It's circumstances I wouldn't be on a normal game,
Sure.
but we have to figure out how to stay consistent, and that's what Schottenheimer preaches. And I guarantee you, in that film room, they're going to work on it. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I just kind of wanted to get your feeling on that, and the floor is all yours. What you got?
Yeah, just throw one more barb out there.
Yeah.
Speaking of Philly and their fans, they're represented by their players, right?
Yeah.
So we saw Jalen Carter's action, and we don't need to say anything else, because that's a Philly player, and that's the representative of a typical Philly fan for all you
Yeah.
Philly fans out there. So yeah, to get back into content, one of the things we like to do is we like to look at film, and we're just fans. We're not experts. We don't know everything about the X's and O's, but we know enough to be dangerous. So we kind of split it up amongst ourselves, and I took the defensive line and gave it my eye test, and you took the linebackers.
Yeah.
So I guess what I would say is, from the defensive line standpoint, all new guys for the most part, outside of Osa and the new rookies and everything. This whole defensive line's been pretty much rebuilt. And my impression was, I think Kenny Clark needs to change his name to Clark Kent because he was out there looking like Superman. So my personal impression of that, just him alone, is what we lost in Micah Parsons. I think we more than gained in return somewhere else on the field
Yeah.
in Kenny Clark. I mean, between him and Osa and Tuah and Solomon Thomas being in there in the middle, they worked the Eagles' offensive line over pretty well. It was definitely our side. It was our line of scrimmage for the most part when it
Yeah.
came to the middle of the field. Solomon Thomas had an excellent game, in my opinion. Osa had a really, really good game, made a couple of plays. Williams, Sam Williams did his job. as an end that night, and I think he played well enough to solidify himself as capable and exceptional in certain situations as well. As Araku looked like a very talented rookie who
Mm-hmm.
got beat up on a little bit. There was definitely some missed opportunities for him, but there were also some missed opportunities for the referees. I think he kind of got a little bit of that Micah Parsons treatment where he's just so fast that they almost have to hold him in order to keep him from blowing up every play. Unfortunately, those plays were a lot of times when Jalen Hurts was able to, take off running around the edge, and then he'd finally get released and
Yeah,
be able to go, at least catch up to the play. But, that's neither here nor there. That's going to happen in every game.
yeah.
But I thought overall, the defensive line made mistakes, don't get me wrong, but they played really, really well. The only thing that surprised me was Fowler. I watched Fowler, and I don't know if it was just because they haven't played together for very long, or what the situation was. But to me, he just looked a little bit slow, a little bit late. Didn't make much of an impact, and when he did get near making a play, he was just a little bit off. So that's something I will look to in the future games to see if he kind of picks back up where he left off last year. Of course, he was, in Washington, so we'll see how that makes an impact going forward. So, what is your take on what you saw from the defensive line, and then give me
Mm-hmm.
your perspective on the linebacker play?
Yeah, for sure. The first thing I want to add on the defensive line is it's we were more balanced. We talked about this in our pregame show, before the game is we're more well balanced on the line now with Kenny Clark. Now I got
Sure.
Clark Kent in my head because he said it, I almost said it, but we're more well balanced, right? We can clog up the middle a whole lot better. He had a really great game. You can tell that having a true one tech or somebody a defensive tackle that they can't move as easy can provide a
Mm-hmm.
lot of problems, and I think it provides Philly a lot of problems, which we would have had the same issues with Jalen Carter on the other side, right? But unfortunately, we got lucky on that one for this time. So, but just leading into that, our defensive ends, they're all second round picks. So
Right.
you've put a lot of capital into them, and they've been hidden behind people like DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons, and even Fowler before he left to the Commanders.
Right.
So you haven't had a chance for these guys to really step up yet. The Sam Williams, the Nealons, and then
Right.
Ezra, who's of course the rookie, but this is their moment to step up, and I think they can only grow from this and really kind of understand that's the biggest moment and the biggest game you could have played in to really have like true starter reps. And I definitely do not want to count out James Houston. That guy with his limited snaps, I think he really surprised some people. I love the play where he slipped right under and Saquon on the ground already.
Yep. One
So
move and in. Yep.
yeah, so speaking back to Schottenheimer, I hope he truly kind of gives some of these guys some snaps, and that kind of leads me into like the linebackers, right? And I'll speak on Lufau real quick. He made the most of his snaps, even on special teams. Just hitting people hard and running around, just light feet, moving quick, and I really appreciated that about him. When it comes to our linebacker core, they're all new too, right? Except Damone Clark, and of course, when we get Overshown back, and then Leofau has been there for a year too with Overshown. I think it's going to come down to kind of just gelling together. It seemed like they were a little slow on their reads. Sometimes they kind of got thrown off on their reads. And, that's why Jalen Hurts was kind of able to help escape the pocket because, when we talked about this, sometimes our ends were getting held or they crashed in instead of keeping the contain. And things just happen. But that's what's going to happen when you have so many new pieces. Think about what's happened from March to now. There's so
Right.
many new things going on. It's hard to just no preseason, no full game speed to really just kind of make it all work against Banner Night against the Super Bowl champs who returned 17 of their 22 stars or something like that. They
Yeah.
returned a lot of people, right?
Right.
And so I'll give credit where credit's due. I do believe the linebackers did at least hit hard and give full effort. But there's a lot of film that I think, especially if Eberflus kind of being a specialized in linebacker, that he's really going to break down and look for those guys to take the next step from there. But I do feel good about our group, but I cannot wait for Leofau hopefully to get more snaps as he rightfully deserves and Overshown to get back healthy because that is going to be a scary duo. And with
Sure.
Sanborn and Murray, it could be a
Right.
scary triple when you have three of them in the box. But
Absolutely.
you got anything to add on to that? That's kind of how I felt about the linebackers.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the linebackers, and I'll also shout out to Houston because that was going to be my one little special highlight from the whole team was he
Yeah.
did. I think he only maybe 3 or 4 snaps he played, there in the second half, and he was impactful on all of them, and that's excellent. So I'm really excited about what opportunities are out there for them and what this team could potentially be. Because if that's how good we can play, having not played together at all and very
Mhm.
little in the preseason, and that's our base level of effort and skill, there's only one way to go from there,
Yeah.
So it's really going to be exciting to see what happens. I think overall for the linebackers, though, I think if there's one position where you really got to get used to each other, it's linebacker, because you got to play off what your brother and beside you is going to do with his piece of the pie. So
Yeah.
I did see a couple times where, indecision led to just being a little too late. Where if we hadn't hesitated, Sanborn, who I thought played well in the middle, he could have played a little bit better. But I think we both spotted some opportunities where he hitched a little bit too much to one side and then was late in getting back to the hole he needed to be in right there in the middle. And that definitely caused a couple of plays, but nothing,
Mhm.
nothing that really broke for anything. I think the things that we suffered were self-inflicted, and that which is what led to our loss. But I think that's only going to improve in time. And you mentioned players coming downhill and making a hit. I saw Malik Hooker come down
Mhm.
5, 6, 7 times, and everybody was thumping, but some of his plays were a lot like Luafal's on that one special returns play. I mean, he came in and it was audible. Wow. I mean,
Yeah.
Malik was thumping every chance he got, and that's what we need to see all year long. So if the defense plays with that kind of effort all season, I think we're going to be hard to beat,
Yeah. You
100%.
Yeah, you can teach keys to success and all that, but effort, man. As long as you got the effort, it's easy to fix the things. That just takes
Sure.
preparation, film watching, actually playing, and those things will come in over time. But as long as our effort is there, we will always at least be competing in every game, and that's what I liked about it. And I'm glad you brought up the safeties because those guys were coming downhill. I didn't
Yeah,
realize Hooker.
they
I mean,
really
I always
were.
knew, I always knew Wilson could hit. Since 2020,
Yeah,
we kind of seen him just kind of like hitting everybody, but Hooker was joining in on that action
yeah,
too. We got the Thunker twins or something like that back there.
yeah.
And we didn't really watch it. I mean, we watched the DBs, but we didn't really kind
Right.
of assign that to a certain me, you, or I. But overall, I mean, they did their job, right? I mean, other than
Sure.
the one long bomb, which even then, it's one of
Good
those things where
coverage. Yeah.
it's good coverage, and eventually, hopefully, our D ends and D tackles can kind of get that pressure better on Hurts, and you may eliminate that play, But that was really their only passing play. Outside of that, AJ Brown wasn't relevant till the last drive, and
Right.
Devontae Smith was just as irrelevant. So it's just one of those things where really appreciates for what happened there, and just happy that it all came together there. And before we move on to the offense, I just want to give a shout out to just Eberflus for at least adjusting after that weather delay. I knew things were kind of ugly until up to that point, but after that weather delay, they gave the offense every opportunity to try to at least go get something, because those three stops back to back to back, that's not normal for Dallas. It's
No,
really not. We're
it's
used
really
to
not.
just getting, slowly get broken down the field, and then they break a play and now it's over, right? But they held their ground because a touchdown would have ended that game, and they held their ground that whole time. So I just want to give that shout out to Eberflus, and I hope to see more, and I hope to see a better start to the games.
Yeah, he definitely took the opportunity with that time delay, that weather delay, and they made some adjustments. And it could have been as little as just putting in fresh guys. You know what I mean? That made the difference and all that. But because it looked like the only significant change that I saw was just different packages coming out. So fresh guys, fresh legs. Might have made the difference there. But whatever he did in that weather delay made a difference, and that led to the 3 stops. So,
Mm-hmm.
who do you feel for the game was your defensive standout?
I'm. I mean, honestly, defensive standout. I'm probably going to say like Trayvon Diggs. I mean, and I love Trayvon Diggs. He's like my favorite player on the team. So, but for him to come back week one, I think that changed a lot of things when it came to the scheme. I think you were able to really trust your secondary to hold those guys in man a whole lot more than what they were expecting. And I think him being back and people doubting whether his ability to play or not was there, and
Sure.
he came back and proved that that was wrong. And so if you doubted him, even I had a little doubt. I personally apologize to you, Trayvon, because you came out and you played, and I'm happy that you're back because I love Trayvon Diggs.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it would have to be the young guys, man. I think the young guys all stepped up, and he's not as young, and he's been on the team for a few years now. But I'll even include Sam Williams in this. But Williams, Luafau, Ezaraku, Houston. I mean, those guys really showed me something, and it was great to see them out there and get their opportunities and watch them have success with their opportunities. I'm a big Luafau fan, so I'm
Yeah,
really excited for what he's going to bring. And Overshown, my other favorite player, I'm just really excited for all those guys being out there in rotation to see what they can do for us because Overshown he's something. That's a special kid, man. And
it is.
for him to be running around out there making plays, I really can't wait. But I would have to say Luafau, and of course Trayvon made an impact. And I think if we're safe anywhere, it's in our cover corners because we've got them, and that really helps us. So
No,
I'm
yeah,
excited.
totally agree, man. I Overshown, man. I just can't wait. I just hope he comes
Yeah,
back healthy and ready to ball because that guy is a monster. But well, let's kind of roll into the offense now.
sure.
The summary of the offense was the first half super hot, right? Those first two drives. I don't know when the last time I saw two drives that were just some beautiful plays and just score two touchdowns. Seemed like last year we could always get down to that 10 to 20, and even in years past, and now you're kicking a field goal because all the
Right,
creativity went away, right?
right,
So, I mean, to see Dak and the boys come out there, go 14 straight, you're like, whoa, right?
right.
And
Just
so,
bang, bang, bang.
yeah, and even, the drive before half to get those 3 points to kind of make it still a close game was huge, too, because you knew Philly was getting the ball afterwards. But then, after the second half and the weather delay, things kind of fell off. And, I haven't really kind of studied the film to see why. But I think, maybe legs got cold and stuff. And it's just it's a bunch of bad circumstances that led to it.
Sure.
But before we kind of break that all down, what was your kind of initial summary of how the offense played that game?
I think they played really well, and I'll make a statement, here in a minute, independently of some things I want to get off my chest. But let me ask you this: do you think we have a running back?
That is the one. That is the one big question of the night. Like everyone was like, "Man, what's this running back going to look like?" And when Jalen Carter got out, it really opened up that. It really opened up that question. And I
Right.
think Devontae Williams really made the most of his carries. I think
Sure.
that for him, even and I watched that film of him just coming downhill and dropping that shoulder. I mean, he is falling for 2 or 3 yards, and that's what Dallas needed. We
Right.
don't need running backs who get standing up, and we haven't had that since before Zeke's downfall, right? Zeke was kind of that runner. Every time he's going through a hole, he's dropping that shoulder and falling for 2 or 3 more because he's hard to take down. And then after 2020, it kind of seemed like that slowed up. But I do believe we have ourselves a running back, but we need to find the relief back. And that's kind of my question back to you is, they healthy scratched Jadon Blue, and,
Right.
Miles Sanders had the big run, and then right after had the fumble. Do you think that Miles Sanders kind of needs to still have that chance to develop, to kind of be in that rotation, or is it time just to put Jadon Blue straight in front?
Here I'll give you my answer to that. I think that and we talked about this offline. I think they played the most experienced players they had in that game.
Mm-hmm.
You're playing the defending Super Bowl champs on banner night in their home, first game of the season. We played our preseason the way we played it, so they went out there starting at least the first half of the game with the most experienced team members they had.
Yeah.
And I think Miles showed me that he still got it. He's still as talented as he always was. I think there were things that caused the mistakes that happened. I wouldn't directly blame Miles Sanders for that play. I saw him run well. He can still find the hole and get through it, and he had an explosive play that, just ended poorly. And that happens. That happens to every team every year. So it's going to happen. Did he do anything that tells me, oh, no, you know, no. But do I still want to see what Jadon Blue can add to the offense? Absolutely. I think we have an RB1. I really do. Javonte Williams, I wouldn't say he surprised me because, like everybody else, I've looked into it to see what he is and what he brings to the table. And it's just, when somebody gets to that point in their career where they leave the team that drafted them and they go somewhere else post injury, you don't know what you're going to get. Is this a half baked cake or is this a cake that's not going to be very good?
Yeah.
And I think he showed that, he's everything that he's supposed to be. And like you said, he falls forward, and that's what we need. We need someone who is going to pump their legs forward for those extra 2 to 3 yards. I don't think I saw one play all night where when he was running into traffic or getting tackled that he stood up or went backwards. He went forward
Yeah.
every time. And he showed me a lot of heart when he drugged the team for that 10 yards getting into, the goal line. So I feel very solid on where we are in our running back situation. Of course, I'd love to see what happens with Jadon Blue, and I think we will get that opportunity versus the Giants. But I feel really good about the running backs for sure.
I think, I agree with you in that whole experience thing and all that. I think a lot of people are holding Miles Sanders against the wall in that big 50-yard run because they're saying that Jadon Blue would have scored, which may be true, but you can't play a game of what ifs afterwards.
Right.
Because if we did that, then every game will be a what if game, right? What if Overshown was helping? And what if. So it's just one of those things where, I appreciate what Miles Sanders brings to the team, but ball security has to be a big thing for him. And I know he's fumbled throughout his career a lot from what I've
Right.
read. And so it's got to be something that needs to be corrected, or Brian Schottenheimer needs to do what he preaches and give the other guys more snaps. So that's kind of where I feel about the RB2 situation. But I'm happy
Yeah.
that RB1 is at least the front runner, right? It's not like Javonte Williams struggling. It's like this open question. So I'm
Right.
happy to see what he can do against the future opponents like the Giants and the Bears and stuff like that until we get back to Philly.
Cool. So one last thing we'll cover on the offense, and it'll be from the coaching perspective.
Yeah.
You brought up earlier that Brian Schottenheimer mentioned we're going to change the culture. We're going to play with effort. We're going to get better and compete every day. From my perspective, at least, everything that he has done and every decision that he has made, not only from who played in the game, but how much they played, who was not on the roster actively or played in the game, and of course what he did with the offense. We saw a ton of motion, we saw a ton of movement in the offense, a lot of plays. You can watch the film and see what options are going to be available as we advance through the season versus
Yeah.
opponents in the play bases that he's running on these play designs. You can kind of already see the concepts that he's going to be switching in and out off of those plays. So I'm really excited about that. Personally, I think that Schottenheimer is so far backed up everything that he said he was going to bring to the team this season, and I
Mm-hmm.
think he's done a great job, and I'm really excited about it. How do you think he fared?
I totally agree with you. I think he's doing everything he said, but it's all going to be about over time, right? We need a sample size over the whole season, which I think we're going to get what he's talking about the whole entire season. I'm just happy that at least, you're not lining up and you're just going to run curls and 5-yard hitches the whole time. And at least if you're going to do it, you're throwing some pre snap motions and throwing some misdirection to kind of help out with that. It's okay to be basic, but in today's league, you gotta find a way to kind of give some misdirection to that basicness, and not just line up and say, "All right, CD, run this curl route," or "Hey, CD, run this slant," But instead, motion him across, and then he's coming back across to do that slant or drag, right? And that kind of helps a quarterback figure out whether in zone, man, those kind of coverages too. An experienced quarterback like Dak probably appreciates pre-snap motion because he understands what the defense may be in and be able to kind of get something off quick, or he knows that he's got time to drop back and build a big play up. And so I do appreciate what Schottenheimer's doing, and I can't wait to see more. But it's got to be consistent. It's kind of like the Mike McCarthy thing that people used to have. It seemed like train camps and OTAs. He had all these crazy designs and these crazy plays that people spoke about, and then you would see it maybe like week 1 and like week
Yeah.
8, and then like after that, it's all gone. So
run to
but
the stop sign and turn around. Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's like it was there and it was talked about, but where is it consistently week in and week out? And after people, you get 17 weeks in and you play the Eagles again or whatever it is, when those people study your film, how do you find a way to keep being creative? Because you have
Right.
coaches like Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, those guys who are able to keep on finding that creativity and finding ways to utilize the players to the best of their ability. I do think that I felt personally that Luke D may have not been as utilized as much as I wanted him to. Turpin wasn't really utilized, but those guys are weapons, right? And when they come into the game, something may be up, and you're going to be looking out for them. So how do we get Turpin more involved and kind of
Right.
hit, right? And I'm
Yeah.
hoping I'm not jumping any of your points, but that's kind of how I felt about the offense, right? But
Yeah.
it's the first game. It's his first ever head coaching game. He hasn't called plays in a while. So I'm not like saying I demand it next week, but I'm just saying those are the things that I'm going to look out for. And as we kind of do this podcast and talk about it, those are things I'm going to kind of relate back to starting from here.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah. You can definitely see that what they're trying to do with Turpin,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of alluded to that as well earlier with some of the play concepts you saw and the motions on the field that there's going to be times where instead of that play action handoff, Turpin's coming across in motion. There's going to be an option in there. It's going to be a handoff, or there's multiple things that can be ran off of some of those concepts. And I think just getting it out there and letting people see it on film is part of the baiting situation here. We're gonna have this look a lot, but eventually you're gonna get to the point where there's gonna be 3 or 4 things we can do off of that same look that you're not gonna expect, and we'll pull that card when we need to tag you for one. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm really excited about that as well. But I definitely thought Schottenheimer called a great game. He didn't look like he was struggling in
Yeah.
any form in this, and I'm really excited about it. So before we move on to question and answer, did you have anything else you'd like to say about offense or defense or the game at all?
No, I think overall we've covered most of the game. I mean, it just comes down to missed opportunities. I will say this, and I'm not, if anyone's listening, like, I'm not saying this in like a bad way, but my gut feeling deep down is that this loss may pay off in the long run because it shows that to this team that even though how perfect you may have been, you still has to hold that consistency for 4 quarters, and
Right.
that may pay pivotal if we were to make the playoffs or in that kind of situation where you are in a must-win game. CD is our number one wide receiver, and I love him to death, and I'm never going to betray him. He can stab me in the back all day, but I'm not going to stab him in the back, right? And, he said in his post-game conference is he owned it, and he said God's got a funny way of humbling you. Well, that's I love that accountability from him, and I love that he's only going to get better from it. I heard that he was
Right.
at the jug machine on Friday, so
Right.
he's learning from it, and I think this loss may pay pivotal to the whole team and the culture. Just understanding you have to stay consistently perfect for 4 quarters. This isn't a 3-quarter game, not 2-quarter, not half. 4 quarters, and that's what football's all about.
100%. All right. So, with that being said, what are your concerns, if you have any,
Mm-hmm.
coaching, offense, defense, special teams, moving forward and heading into week 2 based on what we've seen thus far?
Concerns, I mean, it's going to relate to around the D ends and the linebackers. I think the DBs and the safeties played really well. Linebackers, I'm looking for a little bit more team building, a little bit more trust in your brother, like you talked about. If I'm the front side backer and the runs are coming my way, I'm using my inside shoulder to bring them back into where the crowd's at, or whatever their jobs and responsibilities may be. Not trying to play hero ball, but do your job.
Right.
Uh, D ends, Russell Wilson, I don't see him as a crazy scrambler, as much as Jalen Hurts, but keep him in the pocket. Close that
Sure.
pocket, right? Let's get
Right.
a little bit more pressure. I want him to kind of be feeling like we're breathing on him. So that's kind of there. Offensively, stay consistent. Come out the gate, hot like you did, but stay consistent for 4 quarters, and you can probably bury the Giants quicker than you think.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, I would just like to see our veterans, especially our veteran defensive ends, just be a little bit more effective than
Yeah.
they were in this first game. And I'm not going to judge them too critically, on the first game, but I did expect just a little bit more out of him. I thought there was a couple of missed opportunities that some of the younger players came in and took advantage of, but maybe they can prove me wrong in week two. But I'm definitely going to be watching, Fowler to see how he plays moving forward. I know he's talented, I know he's very capable, but I just want to see a little bit more from him from that perspective.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm gonna throw it off because it's hitting my head.
Yeah,
So this is a random question and it's kind of a funny one. Dak Prescott, okay,
yeah,
obviously had a great game. Now we've seen different uniforms of Dak Prescott over the years. We've seen sleeveless Dak, you've seen two sleeve Dak, and now you see one sleeve. Do you
yeah.
have a preference or a favorite on which one? I personally am a one sleeve kind of guy, and I love the way that his I'm gonna say aura. I'm not a big fan of the word, but I'm gonna say his aura was a lot better with the one sleeve. And it may be because Jalen Carter spit in his face and he's all, like this, he's laughing the whole time. But I definitely am glad to kind of see like one sleeve Dak instead of two sleeve or sleeveless. Do you have an opinion on that?
Well, I was gonna talk about Dak, but I'll answer that now, and I'll say what I've got to say. To answer your question directly, I love all sleeves Dak. I definitely think that one sleeve Dak, is intentional this
Yeah.
season. And I really love that it's intentional, and I loved what I saw from Dak in Philadelphia. But that's my answer to the question. I'm just going to
Yeah.
make a
No,
little
you're good.
soapbox statement here, real quick. This is a message to other Cowboys fans, right? You watched last season until you were disgusted, I'm sure, and you watched Cooper Rush, and you watched Trey Lance, and then even in the preseason this year, you watched our our new guy, Joe Milton. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and you've seen what's out there and is available as far as options. And then you look at our quarterback, Dak Prescott, right? And if you don't know this, then you're just intentionally being ignorant.
Yep.
Dak Prescott is as good of a quarterback as Dallas has ever had. That's the honest truth. And if you're choosing to ignore that, then, like I said, you're doing it intentionally. We have a great quarterback here. Dak is very talented, very capable, and he has all the fundamentals and characteristics that you want in the leader of your team. And I thought that he displayed that very clearly at the very beginning of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that fans really need to take a look at themselves and look at that from that perspective that, Dak is the leader of this team and he's one of the main reasons we're competitive,
Yeah.
right? So I think that Dak played excellent. He's one of our favorites here. So, I think that fans just really need to look at that and make sure that they are evaluating Dak for who he is and what he does on the field and not getting caught up in other crap that's, making them think incorrectly.
Yeah. No, most definitely. And I mean, speak to the culture thing and the leadership thing.
Sure.
Even at the end of the game, I saw a quick clip of what I thought was Dak Prescott, telling Sam Williams like, "Cut that out, like it's over, the game's over." Because at the end, Sam Williams trying to get into a little scuffle. They're kneeling, and Dak, you saw a little clip of Dak being like, "Cut it out," So I really appreciate him for that, and for a guy that in 2016 was a fourth round pick who was supposed to not even ever touch the starting role in the NFL, has done nothing but been exceptional, has adapted to coaching changes, and has done nothing but grow as a player. And I'm happy he's our quarterback as the Dallas Cowboys. And I honestly think that if people are hating, they just have always been a Dak hater.
For
So,
sure.
I mean, I can't really fix people's mindsets, but I can speak
Yeah.
what I say, and
Right.
I will always be with Dak. Dak is my guy, and I only want fathom thinking about him being gone. So
Right.
I act like he's never going to be gone. So
Right. So yeah,
that's
but
my
yeah, to circle back, I'm definitely excited for one sleeve Dak this year. I think he's bringing a little bit of pepper, So
yeah.
he's definitely a little bit feisty this year. So it's going to be good to see him play. And every time we have a full season with Dak, our expectations or high. So hopefully that'll play out this year, and more power to him.
Yep. Any final thoughts before we're done?
Yeah, I just got one last question for you. Given this game, what questions were answered for you as a fan?
Obviously, not starting anybody in the preseason. It seemed like Schottenheimer had the guys ready. I've seen some bad week ones, week twos, coming off the Mike McCarthy era. So I'm just happy to know that, Dak shook off that rust. The one sleep was out there, spitting on people. No, I'm just kidding. He didn't spit on Carter. Carter spit on him. No. The Williams, the running back room, I'm glad that was kind of answered. I'm excited to see kind of Blue and Luthy be more involved on that side. And then defensively, what did Kenny Clark truly bring to your team?
Right.
You traded him away, or you trade Micah Parsons away for him to not only show, hey, we want to become more balanced of a team and a better culture of a team, but on top of it, you're investing, kind of relates back to Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. You spent your money on them, and you're saying, I'm going to build the best team around you two, and you two are going to be what I bet all my chips on. And that's what Jerry did. And that's why I think we're kind of in this situation with the Micah Parsons being traded and stuff. And it's because at the end of the day, Dak Prescott is America's quarterback. And so those were kind of the questions I had to answer for that. Sorry, I kind of went back, but that's what
No, you're fine. Dak is Dak, and Dak did Dak things.
yeah.
That question was answered. No concerns there. I think we've got a head coach that follows through on what he says
Mm-hmm.
he's going to do. I think we've got an RB1. Now, who's our RB2 and our RB3? Yet to be seen, right?
Yep.
I think our defense and our offense are both capable of playing at a high level. There were times in that game that we owned both sides of the ball for extended drives and for extended amounts of time. So that tells us a lot. It tells us that we've got a quarterback that's up to par, we've got a running game that's up to par, we got an offensive line and a defensive line that's up to par, and we can hang with the champs,
Exactly.
right? So I think it answers a lot of questions. And I'm with you. I fear, what has been culturally built into the team on momentum and play style over the years, there could be a little bit of a drop off in the coming weeks. And we don't have a very forgiving schedule here.
Yeah.
We're home versus the Giants, and then we're away to Chicago, taking on, the Bears, and then we're back home again to take on the Packers. These are all tough games.
Yep.
So we need to just grow and continue to build on what we established here in Philadelphia, and I think we'll have a good year.
Yeah.
Tough or not, we'll get through.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you wanted to steal the win in Philly because it puts a real little relief off your team schedule because you know what's coming on the back half. So now it's critical for Schottenheimer and the boys to get ready to hopefully get on a winning streak because these first 8 games before the bye are going
Mm-hmm.
to be so crucial to how the rest of the season falls because you don't you have a tough schedule, and I know the Chiefs lost last night and stuff like that, but the Chiefs are still going to be the Chiefs. You still got to play Philly again. You still got to play the Commanders twice. So there's a lot of games that you're going to want to win now to help down the road. But I'm excited for the season, and I hated that we lost, but I think overall I'm hopeful. After
Yeah,
the past 2 years.
if there was a good loss, that was it.
Yeah.
So we'll get back together later this week, and we'll put out our pregame for the home game versus the Giants, and
Yep.
then obviously we'll do our next coverage of the game post game. So
Yep.
we'll do that as well. So those are the next 2 videos we got coming up. But that's it for now for me.
Yep. All right, YouTube. If you got anything else, comment below, like the video, subscribe, follow us on Twitter. We're more than, X, I'm sorry. But we're more than happy to kind of, have conversations back and forth. We're doing this to kind of interact with Cowboy fans outside of who we know. So, as much as we love being on the camera and just talking Cowboys because that's all we do, offline, but we would love to talk to y'all more. So if y'all got any, questions, comments, concerns, I got a comment today on our first video that said the Eagles blew out the Cowboys, and it's one of those things where
That's debatable.
yeah, it's debatable, right? So I may have that conversation. We're saying, maybe we shot ourselves in the foot, and I hope that we can kind of I want to see y'all's point of view. So if y'all got anything, comment below, like, subscribe, come see us on X. We'll be more than happy, and we'll see y'all for the pregame.